Patty Wharf, and this is Stafford Pride, a brand new program that highlights the very best of Stafford, Texas. Stafford is rich in heritage, diversity, and innovation. And what better subject to kick off this quarterly series than with the man who represented and was the very heart of Stafford for over 50 years, Mayor Leonard Scarcella. Leonard Leon Scarcella was born in 1940 as the only child of Leon and Margaret Scarcella. He often joked that he was born in Sugar Land but got to Stafford as soon as he possibly could.
I moved to Stafford the first 3 days after I was born, and I was born in Eldridge Hospital in Sugar Land, which was the only hospital in the area in Fort Bend County. And in those days, they kept you a couple of days in the hospital. But my family was from Stafford, and I moved to Stafford with my mother and father shortly after that, and I've lived here all my life.
Miss Havens was really close to Aunt Katie Cangelosi, who was a court, and therefore the courts were related to her as well.
The family actually migrated from Italy, from Pogo Real, Italy, and this was back in the late 1800s. And they migrated to a little town just outside of Bryan, Texas called Still Store, Texas, which is now known as Mudville. And they got the name Mudville for the most part because it's a very fertile area for the soil. And so the family got into farming there in Still Store, Texas.
Many of these people came to this country at about the same time. And so they all were either related or very close family ties between them.
His grandparents and so forth lived in the same town my dad and mom did. My dad did, excuse me. My mom was a Houston girl. And they lived in Mudville, Texas, it was called. It's on the Reservoir Bottom. And they were farmers, primarily cotton farmers. And I'm not sure what else they did, but Margaret Scarcella, she married Leon, which was Leon Scarcella. She was Margaret Banana before first. And then she married Leon, and then Leon died young. I don't remember what age he was, but he died young.
My father was just a very accomplished musician and played all the instruments. He played for the Chicago Symphony, or in the Chicago Symphony, the Houston Symphony. So many people came to him that wanted to learn. It was called the Houston Conservatory of Music, and he was one of their top teachers and professors.
Did he want you to follow in his?
Oh, he would love to me. If it had been up to him, and had he lived, he died when I was 10, but I'd have probably been on Broadway. He'd have found some way to get me there and do something that I could have done. But had he lived, my life might have been totally different.
Well, I knew his dad and his mom real well. His dad was a music instructor there at old Missouri City High School, and I took clarinet lessons from him for a few years until I dropped out and started playing football, and I dropped out the music. There, where the police station and fire station is where I grew up. Our old home stood on that property that we sold to the city. It was only had North Main, didn't have South Main, then had cotton fields back of our house when I was growing up. Yeah, we would go over there, and they would be rocking Leonard, rocking the baby. And I was an altar boy at the Holy Family Church at that time, and it was just 10 steps away from the church, their house.
My family had a grocery and furniture business, and it was, the building was on Avenue F, the new building they built. And we lived in the island. We lived at 3023 North Main, and Leonard and his mother lived 2 doors closer to the Catholic Church. So we always walked through each other's yards. We had a common aunt, Katie Cangelosi, who lived 2 doors closer to Avenue E from me. And so Leonard and his mother often visited with Aunt Katie, and we visited with Aunt Katie. So, I mean, we just were back and forth in the neighborhood. There was 5 families that lived on what is now the North Main Street. We were all Catholic people, and so we walked to church, walked through each other's yards. In the evenings, we would oftentimes sit out in the backyard and visit 2 or 3 families at a time. So it was nice growing up that way.
Oh, I knew him when he was, 3, 4 years old. I mean, we had our first communion together, and his mother and dad were friends with my parents, and I used to go visit and play with him, and then he would come to our house, and we would play together, and as we grew up, altar boys together, and in the choir together.
We moved to Stafford. My folks bought a retail dry goods grocery store in '43, and we moved there in '44, and I started in the 1st grade in Missouri City School. Leonard was my 2nd grade school teacher's son, and he was around the school before actually the school started. Before he started school.
He was two years ahead of me, and his mother taught me in the 2nd grade, and his dad taught me junior high band and band in the 5th grade, 5th and 6th, 7th grade. I was in junior high band, and his dad was a band director.
I played a clarinet for quite a number of years, but I don't anymore. And I was around him. I went to many sessions he had teaching, and then he had an orchestra. It was a big band orchestra like back in the 40s. They used to play at the Rice Hotel at the Emerald Room. There would be 1,000 people in there, the men in tuxedos, the women in flowing dresses. It was quite the place to be on Saturday night. KTRH radio station, which was the most prominent in Houston at that time, would broadcast each Saturday night from the Emerald Room for a little while his music and the people in attendance. So, and I would go there with him, and I was very enamored with it and very impressed with it. But being around all these exceedingly accomplished musicians, it hit me very quickly that I didn't have what they had, and I would never have what they had, so I better go another direction.
It was a lot of fun. We spent time at his house. We used to, in the backyard, we'd have washers. We'd throw washers and throw, baseball, throwing and pitching, and it was just, things that boys do.
Leonard was Leonard, he never did change. We were in the Boy Scouts together. Our scout leader, who's still alive, named Anthony Lee Scanlon, and all of us were in the Scouts together. Yeah, we were at Camp Straight, a bunch of us, Frankie Cash, Joe LaBarbera, myself, I don't remember who else was there. Leonard we had a copperhead. Leonard was going to take out his little knife and kill that copperhead. He wasn't real familiar with a copperhead, and it can jump. So, yeah, that's funny, but Leonard was Leonard. I mean, you got to love the guy.
I was fortunate enough to have a car at a younger age, and I used to pick him up in the mornings to go to school and drop him off in the evenings.
I went to school with so many of them, just like Frankie Cash, John Farrell, Joe LaBarbera. Those were people that I literally grew up with here, and so and we were very close. The school was very small. We only had 28 in our graduating class from Missouri City High School.
I first got to know Leonard Scarcella when I started the 1st grade in Missouri City. He was 2 years ahead of me. He was in the 3rd grade when I started the 1st grade. I did get to know him more playing football in high school.
Mainly I kicked the extra points and field goals. It's a little bit safer than, I tried playing quarterback one time, or more than once. I mean, that was supposedly my position. But one time I ran the ball around in, and a big old defensive end knocked me up into the I won't say the bleachers, but the bench. But yes, I love football.
The things that stood out to me about Leonard is that he always kind of had a plan of what he wanted to do, where he wanted to go and be, and so forth and so on. As a child, he was not built to be an athlete. He was kind of medium height and kind of thin, on the thin side. But the big goal in those days was to play football, and he knew he could never be a lineman or be a receiver or be a quarterback. So he thought he would become a kicker. So he set up his own goalposts in his yard, and he kicked and he kicked and he kicked, and he became very good at it, and he made the team as the kicker. And there were some games where his kicks made the difference, you know. So he always, if he wanted to accomplish something, he knew what to do to go about achieving that.
When we was playing football together, he would always wear this the foot that he kicked the ball with, always wear this big shoe. And he had the toe tied up on it. At that time, they was kicking straight on the ball. And he had that toe tied on up with it, and it was the ugliest thing I've ever seen, but somehow he got the job done.
We would kind of joke and tease him about it, but that's what he did to make the ball go through the goal.
Leonard was a teenager when I was a little boy, and I still remember we had a back porch that, and of course between our house and the football field was nothing but cotton patches back in those days. My Uncle Charlie's house was kind of in between us, but you could hear the loudspeakers from the ball game from our back porch. We had a screened in back porch. And so on Friday nights, we could sit on the back porch and hear the ball game announced. And I could hear Leonard's name being announced. So Leonard was kind of a football hero to me as a child growing up.
Betty and I got married at an early age after we graduated from high school, but I kept up with a football team, and that's where I watched Leonard doing them field goal kicks. Nobody could believe it. The best kicker in Fort Bend County, football kicker. That's all he could do because he didn't weigh 80 pounds. Boy, that size 13 shoe helped him, and he won many games by a field goal. Old Missouri City Mustangs High School.
The line was clear between those in Stafford and Missouri City went to Missouri City, and those in Sugar Land went to Sugar Land, and we had a very spirited rivalry with Sugar Land. We were the Missouri City Mustangs, they were the Sugar Land Alligators, and except for a couple of times they'd beat us in football, but we had some pretty good players too for a small school.
Leonard, after he graduated from Missouri City High School, went to Texas A&M University, and Leonard was kind of my hero, I guess. And I wanted to, Leonard was the smart guy from the family, and I wanted to be like Leonard. I wanted to be intelligent like Leonard. So I always knew that I wanted to go to Texas A&M University.
2 years later, I went off to the University of Texas. So we kind of talked about the rivalry between us. We were always very good friends. We always had great, long conversations.
I was at school at University of Texas, and I think it was my freshman year. And I was living there in the dorm, and the A&M Texas game would come, and Leonard was marching in the band, and he'd come spend the night with me. The night before the parade and the game.
Well, in 1958, we were both freshmen at Texas A&M, and we were in the same outfit. And so when you go to Texas A&M back in 1958, it was still all military, all male college. So the very first day that we got there, they put all the freshmen in our outfit, which was If we remember correctly, we think it's 67 people, and the upperclassmen told us look at the right, look at the left, because by the time you graduate, almost all those people will be gone. Well, it ended up only 17 of us graduated.
We have thought back through the years, unbeknownst to both of us at the time, we were both at A&M. He was a senior and I was a freshman, so I'm sure we ran into each other, but neither one of us can remember it.
First time I met Leonard Scarcella, I was working at Mike Pacinella's Sinclair station on the corner of South Main and Avenue F over here. He came in, he was home from college. He was headed to the golf course with a friend. People don't realize what a great golfer he was. He was a club champion out at Fort Bend Country Club several times.
Leonard was a real good golfer back in those days. He played on the A&M golf course there all the time. I think he used to play every day almost, because it was right across the street from the dorm.
Leonard won the Corps championship in golf when we were seniors, and he was with a freshman in our outfit, a guy called Terry Finkbinder.
Leonard was a perfectionist. You know, one thing that, you know, that he chose to do, he would just stay on it till he accomplished it. You know, one instance we started playing golf a little bit. We'd go play golf 18 rounds, and when we get through, you know, I went over and sit down and had a cold beer. He went and got a bucket of balls and practiced more. So, of course, he became a lot better golfer than myself.
Leonard was a night owl. He would stay up. And we would drive by his house on the way home. Sometime it might be 1 o'clock in the morning, and he'd be in the front yard with his golf clubs or a broom. He was swinging a broom for a swing.
He told me not too long ago that he had been to every major golf course in the world. He'd played in England, he'd played in some of the best courses in California, and I don't know where all he went because I wasn't that familiar with golf myself. So he felt like he had achieved that goal. He wanted to play in all those places.
Stafford was primarily an agrarian community.
With the exception of some little grocery stores, a couple of service stations, a post office, and the hardware store, which was at that time Court Hardware, there were very few businesses. Everything was agricultural. And the whole area which you see all this development on today consisted of cotton fields and okra patches.
When do you think that made that transition?
When Texas Instruments bought the property right on the Southwest Freeway. They bought 200 acres of property, and they announced they were going to build their Texas Instruments facility on that freeway. That started the mass migration from Houston into Fort Bend County. That was the door that opened, that transformed not only Stafford, but the entirety of Fort Bend County.
So many times I think back, the town is so different now than when it was then. There on the corner of Avenue F in North Main here was the old La Perouse drugstore. Well, when La Perouse drugstore closed, Leonard then rented that as an office, and that was his law office.
I was the city attorney in 1967 and did a lot of things. In fact, somewhat ironically, while I was in law school, I set up the tax rolls for the city of Stafford in 1965 and did it by hand. There were no computers, there was nothing. So somewhere in there is all my handwritten, if you will, tax roll.
I remember him having an office, and there would be evenings when I would pass by and see his car there, and I'd pull in and we'd visit for a while. We just always kind of kept in touch with each other. I read about him becoming mayor and all of that, but I never thought that he was unapproachable or anything like that. I mean, I just thought he was my friend, and you know, we just talked the way we had always visited before.
It wasn't until I was actually a teenager that my mother was active in politics. She used to campaign for a lot. The J.C. Buster Court over here, she campaigned for him, but she also campaigned for a congressman named Bob Casey, who his slogan was Casey at the bat, and he'd pass out little bitty replicas of bats. And but she felt like I should be active in local and community affairs, and she was my first campaign manager and did that many years and many elections, and she was always successful. So I had an excellent teacher.
And he spoke many times of things that his mother said to him, and his most prevalent one, she said, it's nice for people to like you, but it's more important that they respect you for who you are.
I got elected in 1963 when I was 22 years old to the water board, WCNID number 2, which at that time was by far the more prominent thing. It had all the money. The city had very little money back then. And I served 4 terms there, including 2.5 years as president before the mayor resigned here, and then I ran for the position.
Where I remember him best from is when I went to run for the water board, and he encouraged me to run. And I ran for the water board and was successful. And I ran, I think they were 3-year terms, I believe. I just ran one at a time, and I had my field of politics. I just didn't want any more of that. But when he resigned, when he resigned for the water board, he resigned when Tony Jabia abruptly resigned from mayor and left a vacancy for mayor, and he decided to run for mayor. And I know of course he was elected. He never lost an election. The only thing he lost to was cancer. That's the only thing that could beat him.
Scarcella became one of only 3 mayors in Stafford.
You know, I had known the previous 2 mayors in Stafford. Growing up in Stafford, I knew the previous 2 mayors, Chester Wright and then also Mr. Jabia, and they were well respected. And then here comes Leonard, you know, a really, really intelligent young man, and you know, he was an attorney and really moving up the ladder. And I was really impressed. I was really impressed that he was able to get in.
Well, I gotta say, my mother was in love with Leonard. She thought that he was the greatest little thing around town. And Leonard was pretty popular.
At that time, at 29 years old, I thought that he was a little young and was going to have a hard time at it, but it turned out different. He accomplished so many things. I helped him all his campaigns. Every time he ran, I would take him out, drive him around town, and meet people. And at that time, I probably knew 85% of the people in Stafford that he didn't know.
When I became mayor sworn in September of 1969, we had 3 employees at the city. And they weren't full-time. We had a city secretary and who was on sort of a contract basis. We had a maintenance driver that most of the roads were in gravel, so every time it rained, he'd have to go get people out of the ditch and smooth out the roads. And then we had 1 police officer.
I had applied for the city of Stafford probably in either the last part of 69 or first part of 70. They said they wouldn't hire me until I turned 21. Well, I turned 21 in February of 70, and March 28th, I went to work for the city of Stafford. The former mayor decided he wanted to be mayor again, so he ran, and it got to be a very heated election. January, February, March, no one wanted to come to work here, because if the wrong person got elected if they came to work for Leonard, and if the other mayor person won, well, they wouldn't have a job probably. So nobody wanted. So I worked here by myself for those 3 months, and that's what Leonard joked about. Bonnie was the only police chief or only policeman for the city of Stafford.
Politics was very spirited, to say the least. And when I beat Tony Jaby in 1971, it literally split the town. And like I say, I got 60%, he got 40%. But there was an old gentleman named Mr. Eppolito, and he'd come to the meetings, and literally they would sit, not in chairs, because we didn't have enough chairs in the city hall, but they would get old Coke crates, the wooden ones in those days, and they'd sit on the Coke crate.
At that point in time, we just had, over here on North Main, right across from Stafford Road, there was the old Cat's grocery store. We had the bottom section rented there, and we had the police department was, when you walked in the door to the left, there was a room about 8 by 8. That was the police department. And you walked through a door, and there was a bench, and that was the bench for the court department, and behind that was the city council table where they had city council meetings, and everybody just sat around in the room. It wasn't that big a room.
And it got so spirited, and most of the people in town at that time were Catholics. And Mr. Eppley, one night it got like that, extremely spirited, extremely contentious at the council meeting. And Mr. Eppolito said, well, I guess they're going to have to build a barbed wire fence down the center of the Catholic Church and let Tony's friends sit on one side and Leonard's friends sit on the other.
There was always a division. When you have people in politics, you're going to have divisions. There are going to be people on one side, people on the other. Guess who always won? Was Leonard, 50 years of it.
Leonard, when he became mayor, and I really believe when he ran for election again to be mayor for the second term, he had decided that was going to be his lifelong job. I really believe it, because what he did, I don't think any other man in this community could have or would have even attempted. He never had children, never married, and again, like I said, he was devoted to doing the best he could do for the city of Stafford.
He was married more to this city than you could to a human being, if that makes any sense. But this city was his family, and he took great pride in this city.
I will just tell you, and it was no question, it crossed my mind and crossed a few lovely ladies' mind, that if they were married to me and I was married to them, that a lot of my time would have been spent with the city as opposed to them and raising children. And for whatever reason, I had the good fortune of dating and being with so many lovely women, truly. But it was just obvious that it wasn't in the cards for me to get married, and so I never did, and certainly thought about it on many occasions. But I love the city, where it's come from, what it's done, and the potential it has. So yes, it's played a definite role in my personal life, but I don't regret it. I'm glad I don't look back and say, oh, I wish I'd done that or could have done this. I just accepted that those were kind of the cards that were dealt to me, just like the cards which I certainly was very upset over when my father died. Had he lived, I know my life would have been different. Those things happen in life, and you follow the path that you think hopefully is most productive and most enjoyable, and that's what I've done.
He thought of the city more than anything else in his life. It was first in his life. And his love, dedication and love for the city, I mean, you can just tell.
Leonard, he liked that. I mean, that was his family. Once he became mayor.
A total love for this city, and I can't stress more of this was his life. This was his family. The children in the school were his children. So it was across the board, just a total commitment to the city of Stafford.
When everybody sort of joined together to create the Stafford Municipal School District, and that was truly an event that caused the whole population of the city to congeal. People got around the issue. They felt very fervently about it. And then when we fought 5 years in the courts to get it, and then in 1981 when the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said we were ordered to implement, then that's when the city really came together.
Many of the reasons Staffordians take pride in their city were made possible by Mayor Scarcella. For example, this building that I'm sitting in, the Stafford Center Performing Arts Theater and Convention Center, is just one of the many accomplishments of Mayor Scarcella.
The mayor was a visionary, a man of deep principles, far-thinking, and yes, even way outside the box thinking.
I think Leonard was a very accomplished person. I think he set goals for himself, and it seems as though he achieved every one he set out to do.
Leonard, he did a great job. A lot of things that people never would dream of would to happen, happened.
Well, I can tell you what his pride and joy was the school district. And everybody knows his license plates on his car when the inception of the school district was SMSD.
1975 is when I really started getting to know him more and more. And of course in 1976 is when we started our battle to try to get our school district.
Back when the school district wasn't going to bus Stafford kids anymore, it upset the mayor greatly. He was very concerned about the safety of the kids.
I think the driving force was the busing. We had students crossing the railroad track over on Stafford Road into that busy intersection there on North Main, and we just couldn't see it. We felt like they would get hit, you know. It wasn't something we wanted. We felt like busing should have been provided.
He asked me, I guess at the time he was looking for a secretary. So being fresh out of college, you know, it was a perfect opportunity because my major had been political science, and I knew that he was an attorney and the mayor of Stafford. So I was there with him when the beginning of the school district, and I lived through it. It was just an amazing experience to see from inception to fruition. So it provided me a lot of insight as to him and the kind of person he was that he led. I mean, he was not afraid to take on a challenge, especially if he felt that a certain segment was being denied, and it was like, take care of your, you know, be your brother's keeper kind of attitude, and he lived it.
We got to school. There was a gentleman by the name of Charlie Machuco, who was a lawyer, who actually found the loophole in the law. And when he found it, Leonard pushed it to the hilt and got it done.
We did something that nobody in the United States had ever done before. Nobody thought we could be successful. We were successful and got national attention out of it. And I think people at that time felt that I could run the city.
Not everything that Leonard did was always wonderful, but when you start talking about fighting for a school district to pull away from what was then Fort Bend, or actually I think they called it East Fort Bend Independent School District, later became Fort Bend Independent School District. There were quite a few people who thought he was crazy, but he stuck to his guns.
Those are hard-fought years. Fort Bend ISD was very, very opposed to the establishment of the school. we were very excited about it. My kids started school there on Cash Road when that complex opened, and we were very happy to, in the police department here, to work in and establish one of the first programs where we had an officer in the school.
I think, in my opinion, I would say that was his biggest accomplishment, because to be able to do that is nothing short of a huge impact.
This is probably the most, not just unique, one of the most loving places I have ever met in my life. They are all about Stafford. They are all about SMSD. They're all about the kids. Everybody is involved. It's probably one of the most representative examples of a democratic society that you can ever get. Everybody doesn't always agree. We've got to learn how to get along. We got to remember what the main point is. There's a philosophy that says keep the main thing the main thing. That's what we do in Stafford. Even if we go through things. But let's just say this, we have more wins than we have losses. When I met Mayor Scarcella, that was his philosophy, and people might have, agreed or disagreed with how he did or got to one point, but let me tell you something. There is nobody who loves Stafford, MSD, the city of Stafford, the kids of Stafford, the community of Stafford, than Leonard Scarcella, period.
He did so much, and I think that another accomplishment that he really was proud of was the no tax, the city property tax. Yeah, I think that and the school, that's probably one of the two accomplishments that he put on the highest on the list.
I think keeping the city on a financial secure basis, he kept the services up for the people, and he kept the expenses down so that we eventually did away with the property taxes because of the conservative type good government and his physical responsibility, his knowledge of numbers and finance was probably his biggest strong point.
A lot of people, the Wall Street Journal included, said an experiment had never worked, whatever else. In 1995, I saw where we could do it. We maintained it for 25 years, and the best I can determine, and looking through whatever Google or anybody else, is we're the largest city in the United States without a city property tax.
The abolishment of the taxes for the city of Stafford was huge for bringing business in. And that's one of the things that's really helped bring these valve companies in.
We always like to say that businesses come to Stafford because they get to keep more of the money they make than anywhere else in any other city in Texas. And in addition, we cultivate and we certainly encourage residents there, because most of them, when they buy their house, in fact, virtually all of them, have a much lower mortgage payment in Stafford than they do anywhere else for the same house.
Leonard kept his finger on everything. Leonard watched the budget of the school district. Leonard watched the budget of the city of Stafford. Was I happy with everything he did? Again, I don't think I or anybody else could say that everything he did was wonderful. But overall, 95% of the things that Leonard was for were successful, and we're still seeing the attributes of what he fought for.
Several times that he was behind, the Stafford Center.
What, you gonna build that thing out in the middle of a cow pasture? 4 million people have come there.
I helped build the community college building, and the city was a main factor in that building. Actually, it was the city's building until they paid for it, and we gave it to them.
We got that legislation, and as a result of that, then it opened the door not only for HCC, but many other colleges to build facilities.
And that's a lot of vision and foresight there. You get them in the elementary school, they go up through the high school, then they move to HCC, and then come back and work in the community and keep it all there as another legacy.
Well, and never leave town.
And the other big achievement that we did was the 98. That was one of the hardest projects that we accomplished, because TxDOT they wanted to enlarge the freeway, and they came up with some plans such as an overpass over the whole city like you see in Austin, one that went from 1092 all the way to Pleasant Street, an overpass. The city was very adamant about overpasses because if you look at the post-up overpass, it's not a really good environment around it. And so we wanted underpasses, and they said, well, okay, if you want an underpass, then you have to pay for it. And so the railroad track was one of the hindrances. And so they said, well, why don't we just move it? And everybody just kind of fell back and almost fainted at the table. But in the end, that was the best move.
In order to maintain the mobility, create the underpasses at Stafford Road and Staffordshire, and 1092, we had to literally move the railroad track 100 feet. Well, the railroad track had been there since 1853. Getting that done and getting truly Union Pacific and the Highway Department to agree to that was quite an accomplishment.
He really wanted to see the city expand, and he thought that, you know, if we changed the way that the city looked on the first corridor that people saw when they came into Stafford, that it would change the dynamics of the city. And it actually did, because it actually brought more homes in the area. It also brought more businesses to the area, and you know, we just began to start booming. And actually some of the things that are going on now are because of the things that happened on 98 to bring the attraction.
I don't know how many people would undertake those endeavorments and think they would work, but Leonard somehow made most everything that he put his mind to it to work.
I look back at, I think Leonard and I both probably weathered at least 8 major events in our area, from all the way from ammonia spills in Stafford, and when they had the fire in the pool supply place, to especially Ike, Harvey, the tax day flood, you know, all of those, like I said, 8 major events. And, you know, during those times, we were talking to each other on a daily basis. You know, Mayor, what do you need? Do you need some sandbags? Do you need some barricades? What do you need? Do you need our service?
Well, I worked for the mayor as the emergency management coordinator from 2008 to 2017. And I came in with Hurricane Ike literally the first day in the first phone call. And I learned a lot from him. We had to go straight into managing a disaster, not knowing each other very well. So when Hurricane Ike hit Stafford, we were going 90 miles an hour. And within 2 days, because it took a little while for Ike to blow through Stafford, and the hurricane winds had not actually left Stafford yet. And the mayor called for an assessment. He wanted to know a damage assessment. And we were thinking, wow, we are still responding. We have people who are trapped. We have people who are needing assistance, but we need to stop and get a damage assessment. So we did. And I learned quickly that the mayor knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to the city of Stafford and what his role is to responding and answering questions to the people above him to bring in funds for the city and to bring in reimbursement and recovery for the city.
Reporting to you on developments and the current status of Hurricane Harvey.
We had a situation in Siena where a tree fell on a man. Well, fire trucks can't operate when the wind speed gets above 60 miles an hour. But Leonard had an armored car. And so I called Leonard and I said, Leonard, I need to use your armored car. Mayor, you got it. You got it, whatever you want it for. You know how Leonard was. And so they took that armored car into Siena and rescued that man, which we would have never been able to do.
But Leonard, he was, you know, he loved that job, and of course the city of Stafford benefited from it because he did a great job, and you know he took hardly no pay for all those years, and that saved the city a lot of money.
You can look any direction in this city and you see Leonard Scarcella. You know, you see his footprints on it, whether it's the Stafford Center, Civic Center, School District, this building, the police department, the fire department. I mean, you can look any direction and it's Leonard. And how many people in a lifetime can accomplish what he did?
I think I have been good for the city. I think the city has progressed in a way that few have. We've got all these attributes we've just discussed and many others to extol and to be proud of. And I feel good that I was able to lead in those efforts to bring Stafford to where it is today from where I knew it when I first became mayor as a cotton field and an okra patch and a couple of gas stations. So, you know, it's very gratifying to me. And I've often said, well, it's not how long you serve, it's what you accomplish. But also I would have to, in all honesty, say that perseverance and hanging in there and overcoming a lot of adversity has its attributes, it has its merits, it has certainly its justification. And there have been tough moments, there's no question about it, many, many. But there have been some that I wouldn't give anything for and that I cherish, that I will always remember, and that I appreciate the citizens of Stafford have given me that opportunity.
Scarcella is not only known for the obvious accomplishments, it is the legacy he established that people will remember and hold on to.
I always admired Leonard because he was very good with numbers. He could predict things that might be coming in the future and protect the city, you know, for that.
The man had a vision. He could look like he had a crystal ball. He could see what the future was bringing. Naturally, he was a very intelligent man.
He could come up with mathematical answers while everybody's still on their calculator and remember it as clear as it was yesterday. And so I was always impressed with that.
I can say that everything he did was up and honorable and above board. It never was anything slightly right-handed or left-handed. Always straight and honest.
I don't think anything was a personal medal or accolade to him. I don't think that was anything that mattered to him. What mattered is everything I do and everything I say is for Stafford, the city of Stafford. And I think that's what his legacy is going to be, is that he was not selfish in any way.
A man of his word. What he told you could take it to the bank. He said what he believed, and that's the way he lived his life.
He was just well loved because he connected with people, and the longer he was there, the more they liked him.
He understood the public, and he understood what he was fighting for. And I think that Leonard will go down in history as one of the greatest things that ever happened to the city of Stafford. Whether you liked what he did or you didn't like what he did, he stayed, he fought. You might have to listen to a 30-minute speech, but he always continued to fight for the city of Stafford.
About 2 weeks after we moved here, I believe it was a Kroger on 2234. And all of a sudden we bumped into this gentleman that introduced himself as the mayor. He told us, we look unfamiliar. Do I know you? Your faces look unfamiliar. And we were trying to figure out who this young fellow was. And he introduced himself as Mr. Scarcella, I am your mayor. And that was 33 years ago. And history has been the same ever since. The little town of Stafford. I told my husband, oh my goodness, we're in Mayberry.
I worked there for 32 years with the mayor. We worked close, hand in hand, for a long time. And, we kind of built this city. It kept growing and growing and growing. And it was always conservative from the people that we hired and the number that we hired. And we tried to hire the best people, but not, we dealt in quality and not quantity.
So August will be 30 years here with the city.
26 years now.
It'll be 18 years in March.
I began as a volunteer here when I was 18 years old. Then I started working on the part-time side, and then as the department evolved, responsibilities evolved. Ultimately, I applied for the fire chief's position when it was open, and was hired by the mayor and city council.
You and the mayor have a long history together, kind of a love-hate thing. It's something that y'all both teased about.
I don't know if I'd call it a love-hate thing. As my responsibilities increased and my interaction with the mayor increased, it was one of those things where he has a long history of guiding the city, the ship through good times and bad, and I always respected that. He had his very strong, to use his word, fervent beliefs on matters, especially in the area of fiscal conservativeness and just living within your means, and always trying to put the city on the best footing possible. And I think sometimes he and I were diametrically opposed on some issues. As much as he was forward thinking, I think a lot of times some of the things that I brought with regard to evolving the fire department as the city evolves, because there was a cost factor. So, and we did have some philosophical differences.
I started off as a patrolman, and I've held every position with the exception of dispatcher here at the Stafford Police Department. When I came to work in Stafford, all the new police officers actually swore in the mayor's office, and the mayor actually signed our original credentials. And when he met you that day, he did not forget you. And if you'd see him out in public, he always made it a point to speak to you. He always spoke to my family. We ran into him at Kroger when we had a Kroger here in Stafford, and my middle son was probably 7 or 8 years old, and he told the mayor, he said, "Mr. Mayor, one day I'm going to have your job." And the mayor said, "I bet you will."
You know, we had our ups and downs. You always knew where you stood with him. He was a great role model. We did a lot of projects together, and I learned a lot from the mayor.
He was a real critical thinker. By the time he had made a decision, he had already mentally looked at, the opposing side, and would come to, in his mind, what the best avenue was. And it was once he dug his heels in, he was there to ride it out, whatever it was. So I've got to say, there's not many people that have that characteristic.
The city of Stafford, I have always said and always believed, led with their heart. Did everybody get along always? No. And there was tension, just like there's tension in family. But there's tension because the leadership of Stafford cares what happens to every individual that works in that city and that lives in the city of Stafford, and the businesses that are there, because it is it's family to them.
He wanted Stafford to grow. He wanted Stafford to be the best. He wanted everyone to represent Stafford. When you think of Stafford, yes, you think of Scarcella, but you think of the people. You think of neighborhoods. You think of beauty. He only wanted the best. He wanted everyone to have the best. And everyone felt a part of the city. I've never felt like I wasn't a part. I never felt like I couldn't pick up the phone and call someone. I never felt like it was something I couldn't ask for. He was always there. He could communicate to you. He would listen to you. Now he's going to give you his point and his side. He was a debating person. And sometimes he kind of stirred up stuff to make debates because he wanted you to think, and he had his opinion. Most of the times he trying to sway you over to his side.
Most people don't love to debate. He thrived on debate because I truly believe this, that through the debate, it made sure that all the facts were presented and made public to the people. So And he was on the debate team when he was in high school, so I guess that's why he wound up as a lawyer.
His storytelling was what, oh my God. I mean, like, his storytelling is just unparalleled too. You know, he just told all these stories. If you ask him a question, be prepared for 15 to 20 minutes just for him to get started to get to the question, because he had to tell you how it evolved. He knew all the players from the beginning. He's gonna start you back in 1970 something and bring you all the way back to the 2000s. So he was that guy. I mean, he was a storyteller, and he had so many, he was so full of knowledge that, you know, if you wanted to know anything about this city or anything surrounding this city, he knew all about it.
We always had a good time with him when he came over our house. It was always an Aggie function. The wives loved listening to Leonard because he had a lot of stories.
He was very passionate about everything he did. Was it taxes? Was it the children of Stafford? Was it the school? Was it the budget? Whatever it was, he was very passionate about it.
When the school district first opened, he got involved with the different sports teams, and he would go to all of their activities.
I remember when the school first sent its basketball team to state. I went on that trip, and so did Leonard. He was all excited about that, and I was too. It was 3 games that they had to play to win the state championship, and Leonard and I, we were at all 3 of them.
The mayor loved football. He loved going out to football games on Friday night. One night I was in the concession stand, and he came up to the window and he asked me where were the peanuts. And I said, we don't have any peanuts. Well, why not? It's a concession stand, it's a football game. I said, Mayor, you are exactly right. I believe I worked in the concession stand another 3 years. Every Friday night we had football games, I had the mayor his peanuts. Him and John Farrell would be covered with peanuts.
The students of Stafford will always remember the mayor in his plaid pants at every 4th of July celebration since 1976. Now, how he preserved them, I don't know, but he swears it's the same pants.
We used to wire up the festivities a long time ago. He would wear those special trousers that he had, but he would stand out.
Everybody got a chuckle out of that.
That was just a statement that you can't erase. Those plaid bell-bottom pants.
That's right. I saw that same pair of pants for 32 years. Those checkered pants, it would have not been a parade had Leonard not worn those checkered pants.
All the kids at Stafford, you know, they would come back and say, hey, Mayor, you still got on your plaid pants. And he was so proud of them.
Those things have been around since the turn of the century, and he was vowed and determined to continue to wear them. One particular summer, he told me he would always diet, but he'd snuck in way too many ice creams, and he didn't think he was going to get in them, and he was rather stressed. He'd gone home, I'd left my office for a few moments and returned to a voicemail. Vicky, it's Leonard. I just wanted to let you know I did it. I'm in my pants. Now, I can't sit down, I can't breathe, and I certainly can't cough, but I'm in them.
To him, that was his time. He loved the 4th of July, and so did all families. It was a time for him, for families to get together, friends to meet, to talk, to enjoy themselves, to catch up, and those plaid pants.
I think the Historical Society has received the pants that he wore every year. We're going to put them up in our Historical Society meeting room when we get one.
And then the Children's Festival. I mean, everybody could not wait to see what he was going to dress up as. I mean, we were a Christmas tree, we were an elf, we were a snowman. I mean, every year it was something else, something different, and everybody was so excited to see what he was going to come up with.
My wife bakes a very good apple strudel. Every year, she sent him an apple strudel for Christmas. He complimented her and thanked her for the apple strudel. He said that always helps me get through the holiday season. Chris was always happy to give it to him. The only thing that upset her a couple of times when he made a comment, he shared it with Poochie. That was one of his early dogs.
I know he loved his animals. He loved those dogs beyond belief.
He didn't have pedigree animals. He had ones that were pound animals. He rescued those animals, and they became his friends.
we would always see Leonard running around the track in Kingsway.
You know, he had a little driveway out front, and when he wasn't at the park running, he was running in that circular driveway in front of his house. And
Really? I never saw that.
You never saw that?
I saw him at First Street Park, but I never saw him in his own yard.
Yeah, he had a frisk little walk that he did, but you know, he led a full life.
Another great attribute of Stafford is its diversity. Mayor Scarcella often said that Stafford was a city that you could comfortably live, work, play, and worship together. It's the most diverse city in Fort Bend County, which is the most diverse county in the nation.
He felt that that was our greatest strength, and it is, you know, and he tapped into that early on, that makes our city so special and so strong that you know, and he always bragged about the school district being the United Nations, and I think no one will ever forget those words because he was proud of that, and it should be proud because everyone in the community, no matter where you were, you mattered to him and you mattered to the city.
He'd always use that anecdote of, you know, I don't care whether they're red, purple, polka dot. I want all Stafford students. I love that about the mayor because that part he said all the time, and it did not matter how anyone else perceived it, he would say it and he'd stand by it because that was him.
It doesn't matter what race, creed, or color you were always treated the same.
Stafford is known for having many different types of churches. I'm standing in front of Holy Family Catholic Church where Mayor Scarcella attended. It's currently located just outside the city limits in Missouri City, but began in Stafford.
I would run into him at church and we would visit. He had great faith, I believe. I think he felt he was doing what God wanted him to do.
I have great belief in the good Lord. He's been tremendously helpful to me. He's gotten me over a lot of things that were certainly some serious challenges. To say what he's going to allow me to do and how long he's going to allow me to do it, I'm not about to try to second guess him.
Holy Family Catholic Church is also where many people said their goodbyes to Leonard Scarcella. His funeral mass was held here on July 2nd, 2020, even in the midst of a pandemic.
His whole life was devoted to service to others.
You will always be my mayor and the mayor of Stafford, my friend, my mentor, and my brother.
Leonard Scarcella will always be known as a great leader for Stafford, someone who lived, breathed, and dedicated his entire life to this city and the citizens he loved. He will be sorely missed.
I just think that his was a life well lived. He did what he wanted to do, and a lot of people don't get that chance, and he did. I think he would feel that he achieved the goals that he set for himself.
I wished he could have been with us a little longer to finish some of his ideas.
There won't ever be another Leonard. You know, and I cherished his friendship.
Leonard, he's a special man, and it hurt me to see him go.
I guess I'm gonna just miss it, hearing that. Hello, Chief. How are you? That's what I'm gonna miss.
I would thank him for all he did for me.
Thank you for the opportunity to serve in this position. He had a lot of confidence in me when he appointed me to this position. I hope I fulfilled it to the standard in which he wanted.
The last thing I wanted to do was to miss the opportunity to explain to him my appreciation for him taking a chance on me, personally and professionally, to let me come from that 18-year-old, smart aleck kid to have the confidence in me to let me have my chance to run the organization. And he didn't have to do that. He and I both got a little choked up about it, just because of the fact that, it was one of those things where, we were just being honest with each other. And then, that was the last time I talked to him.
May he rest in peace.
He will be missed. I'll promise you that. And I hope they can keep this city in good shape.
Mayor, I got it. You told me a life lesson. You told me a city business. You told me a lot of things. And I'm so honored to know Mayor Scarcella in my lifetime. I will treasure every fond memory.
I hold him such a high esteem that we should follow his example, being selfless.
He was open-minded and willing to learn, even all the way until the end. So I just want to say, Mayor Scarcella, rest in heaven, job well done.
Yes, he did rub off on us. And yes, he showed us the light of service. And yes, he showed us the passion to serve this community.
We will all get through this together, relying on the strengths the mayor projected. We can use his principles, his ideas, his concepts that he planted in each and every one of us.
And I hope that someday people will really understand that he did give his life for this city. I'm going to miss him. He was a friend. So I just hope that his legacy lives on forever.
He believed that the city was one of the best cities in the world, and he worked toward that achievement. It all stands on his record.
There is no Stafford history without speaking about Mayor Scarcella, and that will always be how it is. There will never be another person as passionate, who has grown up here, who has done all the things that they've done like he has. Absolutely no one. No one. He's irreplaceable.
I wanted to let him know that I was praying for him, and that I think I said something in the note to the effect that Jesus promises us that we will have a home. There's a place for each of us in heaven. So when you get there, make sure that your house is just 2 doors down from mine. So I think that might have brought a smile to his face.
For its closure, I don't think we'll ever have closure. And I don't want us to have closure, because I want us to all think about Leonard Scarcella, the mayor of Stafford, 51 years. Wow, that's nothing but love.
You have shaped Stafford. Would you say that Stafford has also shaped you?
Stafford has been very good for me. I can't begin to tell you how much Stafford has done for me personally. I look back and think of all of the tremendous opportunities that I've had, what it has done for me, and most of all, the fantastic people that I've had the opportunity of meeting and working with and dealing with, and number one on that list are the citizens of Stafford.
I say thank you. Thank you for your selflessness. And rest in eternal peace. We will meet again and giggle.
Thanks for joining us for the first episode of Stafford Pride. Join us next time as we highlight Stafford's heroes, our first responders. I'm Patty Wharf. Stay Stafford strong, and we'll see you next time.